This morning, we're going to tackle a topic: how to overcome imposter syndrome. And there's three easy steps in order to do so. But one question I'm often asked: people see, where is it? Right here. People see the acronym CHAIR on the book or the podcast, and they say, does the I stand for influence? And I'll say, no. Influence is temporary, but impact is lasting. They'll say, well, what about imposter syndrome? And I'll say, no, because you can't be an imposter and be a person of impact. So I got this question a lot over the past couple of days as I posted about being a person of impact. And in fact, in my coaching program last Thursday night, we went over the 5 types of imposter syndrome because, believe it or not, it manifests itself in a lot of different ways. And someone said to me, oh, we got to go deeper on this because a couple of people actually, out of the 5 types, four, a couple of us actually several of us were 4 for 4 or 4 out of 5. So we were like, oh, we got to go deeper on this. So this morning, as I give you the 3-step framework for how to overcome imposter syndrome, I invite you to go deeper with us on this topic as well. You have the link here that you can jump on my calendar. A number of people have done that over the past few days after seeing these videos. I'm going to talk about how to be a person of impact and get rid of imposter syndrome. If you're on LinkedIn or Facebook, I invite you to follow me. Certainly, if you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel so that you can get all of my videos. But I invite you to go deeper with me and with us on these topics to make sure that we're giving you the right tips to ensure you succeed in any role. So, imposter syndrome does manifest itself in a number of different ways. And the statistics show 70 to 80% of us have experienced imposter syndrome at some point in our lives. Now, you may think that number 70 to 80 is kind of low. I kind of thought it'd be more in the 90s. But nevertheless, this idea of feeling like a fraud, not smart enough, maybe you don't belong in that room or in that conversation. The feelings of inadequacy have hit all of us at some point in our professional or personal lives. And that truly is the idea behind being an imposter. You feel like you don't belong, or they're going to find out you're not as good as you think you are, or as you appear to be. And what happens when they find out? And it's just this sense of not belonging and being a fraud. So if you understand that imposter syndrome has happened to most of us, then that leads to the question of, how do we overcome it? How do we overcome this feeling of inadequacy and feeling like a fraud? Now, before I give you the 3-step framework, it's important to make one distinction here. The distinction is imposter syndrome is not about self-esteem. Those two things, no, those two things are very different. Imposter syndrome, like I said, there's 7 root causes that I'm going to teach tonight. Imposter syndrome is so much deeper. It's much deeper seated in its root cause than just a self-esteem or self-confidence issue. It's actually a competence issue, not confidence. So it actually goes to the root of whether you think you are a competent person. So be careful not to confuse imposter syndrome with self esteem, because, in fact, the feelings of being an imposter go so much deeper. So grab your pen and paper and let me give you the 3-step framework. First, and let me just give you an acronym because you guys know I love acronyms. Clearly, I love acronyms. look at the title of the book and the podcast. Clearly, I like acronyms. The acronym here this morning is AIR. Not that AIR, very different, but AIR. The first step is awareness. That's what the A stands for. So number 1, the A is for awareness. Now, you may say that's kind of obvious. Believe it or not, it's actually not obvious. Because when we have feelings of being an imposter, or imposter syndrome hits us, and it hits all of us, then you can even say the A is for acknowledgement. You have to acknowledge those feelings are there. You need to be aware that you're having an imposter syndrome moment, because it does happen. And the awareness and acknowledgement, whichever one you decide to use for A, is important because it impacts how you show up in that moment. So if you're given a big presentation or a project, or you're on stage, or the spotlight's on you leading a meeting, or whatever it may be, you need to acknowledge and or be aware of when those feelings creep in, because it's going to impact how you show up in your big moment. Now, quick caveat here: if you wake up every day feeling like an imposter, then I'm going to link to my video of silencing your inner self critic, because that goes beyond a moment in time. That goes beyond a particular situation of imposter syndrome, and that's deeper seated as well. So I'll either include that above, or link to it below in the description when we're done. So awareness and acknowledgement. You just need to say, hey, look, you know what? Oh, it crept up on me. It's here. I have a moment of doubt and feeling like a fraud. You just need to acknowledge that to yourself in that moment. Because to acknowledge it means you can overcome it. If you don't acknowledge it and you ignore it, it's going to get worse, either in that moment or in some proximity in time. So, awareness slash acknowledgement, whatever works for you for the A acronym, is key. Number two, the I. The I is for identification. Identify the root cause of the imposter syndrome. Why do you feel like an imposter in this moment? Why do you feel like you don't belong in that room? And we've all walked in a room and looked around and thought, yeah, they made a mistake. What are we doing here? Or we're in the wrong room. Or are you sure I'm supposed to be on this calendar invite? We've all been there. The I is for identification, because you must identify the root cause of what is leading to this feeling of being an imposter. Now, if you've read the book, then you know I say in the I section, the I strategy, that part of the root cause sometimes can be you feel like you're a perfectionist and you didn't reach a high standard. Maybe you think you did not perform well with that presentation or that project. Maybe the root cause gets to something about your performance and how you showed up in that moment. But if you've done the work to get to that point, then that will help you get to number three, which is the reframe. So after you're aware and acknowledge the feelings are there, and you identify the root cause. Why are you feeling this in this moment? What is it about these external surroundings that make you now feel like you're an imposter? Then number three, the R, is the reframe. Reframe your thoughts. Reframe your response. Because the reframe is, wait a minute, I've done the work. I've gotten stellar reviews. I've accomplished this, this, and this. Of course I belong in this room. Of course I belong on that leadership team. Of course I have done the work. So you are where you belong. But the power of the reframe is what turns the feelings of being an imposter into actual, now you're responding, you're going on offense versus being on defense. Okay. We're not in football season yet, but bear with me here. Imposter syndrome is all about being on the defensive. When you reframe, you're going on offense in your head, in your mind, and how you show up. That, no, wait a minute. You get the root cause. You just said, what is it about this moment that makes me feel like an imposter? And now you're reframing your response to come back and say, well, that's not right. And here's why. So if you are a perfectionist, or if you're an expert, someone who thinks you have to know everything about everything, if you're a subject matter expert in your job and you think you'll never know enough, then the reframe of that mindset very much is a growth mindset, which is you learn more over time. So, as there are 5 different types of imposter syndrome, there are reframes for each one of those. But for purposes of this morning, I want you to have that 3-step framework of the A for awareness or acknowledgement, I for identification of the root cause, and R, root cause, and R for the reframe, because that very quick 3-step thought process is what is going to help you overcome those thoughts of being an imposter in that moment. Now, you all are very much aware of a story I tell in the book, but I've also mentioned it here on these videos, and I'll share it here now because it is part of the reframe, and it's a reframe I have used often, so I'll share it with you. The story is when I worked on Capitol Hill for Congressman Jim Cooper, who's still in Congress. Quick, I'll make it quick. One day, Jim and I were talking, and I would call him Congressman, and he would say, Cicely, call me Jim. And I'd say Congressman, and he'd say, Cicely, call me Jim. And I'd say, but I know, you're a congressman. I'm going to give you the title. I'm going to call you the title. And he said to me, Cicely, you've known me for over 20 years. Like you've known me for, for a while. Um, Call me Jim. And I said, I just don't know that I can do that. And he said, here's one thing I want you to keep in mind. And I said, okay, what is it? And he said, when you view yourself as an equal, you will be treated as an equal. Everyone puts their pants on one leg at a time, just like you. So when you view yourself as an equal, you will be treated as an equal. So I've used that in my head as my reframe many times when I thought, what am I doing here right now? And places of power and authority and some of the roles I've held in the past and some of the ways I continue to show up now. When you view yourself as an equal, you will be treated as an equal. And that is probably one of the most powerful reframes I can offer you. I can offer you as part of the 3-step process for how to overcome imposter syndrome. So, when those moments of inadequacy and doubt pop up, you now have the A, the I, and the R. Go through that mental checklist when those feelings occur and remember that powerful reframe of when you view yourself as an equal, you will be treated as an equal, and use the power of that reframe to now reframe your response and step into the moment that you have in front of you. You're not an imposter. You're not an imposter. But you need that 3-step framework to be able to turn those feelings of being on the defensive into offense. That is the key to overcoming imposter syndrome.